well that all the host of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. If you can't be a pine on the top of a hill, be a shrub in the valley, but be the best little shrub on the side of the hill. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. It isn't by size that you win or fail. Be the best of whatever you are. And when you do this, you mastered the length of life. Thank you.
All right. Hi. Thank you, Tom. And I really appreciate you reading here today.
Thank you. I so much appreciate you having me. This was an honor, and please feel free anytime you need me to engage here and get the message out. I am more than willing to do so. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. So next up to read is my friend Gregory Schwartz, who doesn't want to be seen. It's all right, Gregory. You don't have to be seen if you don't want to. Now, I met Gregory many years ago, and he's always willing. He's a local poet, and he's always willing to lend a hand. He was a 2007 Poet Laureate of Asbury Park, and he was one of my readers at when I held in 2019. I held 6 read-ins, and he was one of my readers at one of those read-ins. And he's going to read 2 pieces by James Baldwin. One is from Baldwin's 4th nonfiction book, No Name in the Street, and the other is from his 1964 collaborative work with Richard Avedon called Nothing Personal. Baldwin was the voice of the American Civil Rights Movement, one of the 20th century's greatest white writers. Baldwin broke new literary ground with the exploration of racial and social issues in his many works. He was especially known for his essays on the Black experience in America. And now, Gregory, if you will read, please.
Okay. When I switch over between readings, it'll take a moment. So there won't really be a very smooth transition.
Okay.
That makes sense because I'm on some wacky PC.
Well, you just go ahead and read.
For nothing is fixed forever and forever and forever it is not fixed. The earth is always shifting, the light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails, lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out.
I guess we're waiting for the other one now. Okay.
It is not true that people become liars without knowing it. A liar always knows he is lying, and that is why liars travel in packs, in order to be reassured that the judgment day will never come for them. They need each other for the well-being, the health, the perpetuation of their lie. They have a tacit agreement to guard each other's secrets, for they have the same secret. That is why all liars are cruel and filthy-minded. One's merely got to listen to their dirty jokes, to what they think is funny, which is also what they think is real. James Baldwin, No Name in the Street. Click. PCs are weird, man. They're terrible. Oh, anyhow, thanks. Those were the 2.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Okay, you read them already?
Yes, and now they come up on the screen.
No,
That's
I
funny.
just did that. I didn't realize I was doing that.
Oh, you could have done that?
Yeah,
I'm
I didn't. Hey, I'm new at this. You gotta excuse me.
Oh, yeah, same here. Hey, you go to shared screen.
I know, honey.
Thing.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah, host disabled. Anyhow, I don't know either.
That's
But
okay,
thank
honey.
you. We all right.
Yeah, I miss you. I miss you, darling.
Yeah, we're down. You know, that theater's not going to open for 2 years, but things are, you know, progressing. All I
Okay,
can-
I'm gonna go on to my next reader. Now I had one.
Okay,
of
I'll
my
mute
read-
me
I
up.
had- I'm
Hey,
sorry.
thank you, my dear. Awesome.
right.
Be
So
kind.
now we're gonna hear from Sunlight. Sunlight is a friend of mine also, and he's I'm sorry, he's a local poet in the purest form, and he spreads sunshine and light wherever he goes. And he was also one of my readers, and there he is reading at my 2019 African American read-in. You will find Sunlight's publications at the Asbury Park Library, and he will grace us with a few of his personal poems. Sunlight.
Thank you, Lynn, for this blessed opportunity. I appreciate you every time, always walking in the sunlight. I would like to read. I would like to read out of my first book called Self-Gratification, poem out of there, and out of my newest book called Can You Ride My Wave? Take a second to bless. Man, should not live by bread alone, but by the spoken word. This first poem I like to do out of my self-gratification book when I was in the refined mind days is called Butterfly Effect. And it goes something like this. My butterfly effect gives me my self-respect and my best mental intellect as I dance on cares away from cold stares where love warms like a July sun and beautiful flowers overrun. My soul, my life, truly the greatest story ever told as the urban saga unfolds. I was an ugly caterpillar, lost in a world of self-hate and self-destruction. Ignorance kept me trapped in a cocoon with Alice the Goon and a dirty spoon. Wrong physical and mental foods delayed my metamorphic process. But like nature, what must be caused a chain reaction of cause and effect, which made things correct. I transformed into beauty and an inner glow brighter than a UFO. To have thoughts of self-triumph, which keeps me counting blessings in life's lessons. There could be no second guessing. The truth has always been revealed. The story very real. How I changed from hate to love, removed the bad grudge, so I can rise above and seek intellect, which causes my butterfly effect. All right. This next poem out of my newest book, Can You Ride My Wave, is called Flowers for the Living. Flowers for the living, unselfishly giving, organic soul, the greatest story told, prospector mining for gold in a place where vegetation is sold. Thoughts are planted, granted access to sunlight, water with no borders, just natural order. Words line up to be slaughtered, shedding petals, glistening and listening to wind chimes infused with nursery rhymes, bird humming good times, seeing a pile of smiles that if stretched produces miles of styles, marble and tile poetry file called the River Nile, driving home a car through a nation, 3-minute vacation, parked in water, so we slide, glide, ride with go, head to toe, shoe to new, botanical group, indigo blue. 24-hour meteor shower displays solar power. It's free and giving a presentation of flowers for the living. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sunlight.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so the next reader is someone who I got on just recently because one of my readers had a home problem. So now it's going to be Michael Conley. Michael is going to read something from Eldridge Cleaver. I know Eldridge Cleaver was a Black Panther, and I know some little bit about him. I don't have the notes in front of me and everything. I did read his book, Soul on Ice, which I found very, wait, you know what? I forgot to change that. Come here. There he is. Oops, wait a minute. Okay, there he is. There's Eldridge Cleaver.
Mhm.
Okay, so Michael,
Okay, thanks so much, Lynn. So Soul on Ice, Eldridge Cleaver has maybe the greatest job title on a resume ever. He was the Minister of Information for the Black Panther Party. Before that, he was born in 1935. He moved to Watts when he was relatively young. He spent most of his juvenile life in detention centers. And then when he was 19 years old, he was jailed for marijuana possession and spent 2 years in. He was released when he was 20. He was released when he was 21 years old. He had 1 year outside and was arrested again in 1957 for rape and attempted murder. He then served time in San Quentin and Folsom prisons and wasn't released until he was 31 years old. During that time, you just think about that. Somebody who's spent their entire lives in prison, he's self-educated. And the thing that really struck me about Soul on Ice is it's actually just a series of essays where he is quoting some of the greatest thinkers and the greatest authors in a series of essays, and he just combines them all in this way that really, really struck me. It kind of reminded me of Frederick Douglass being an escaped slave, writing My Bondage, My Freedom, or more in touch with my Irish people, Bobby Sands's Notes from Prison and Oscar Wilde's De Profundis. Kind of an interesting thing to see how well he just taught himself all the classics while being in jail. Anyway, Soul on Ice, which I picked up at the Asbury Book Cooperative because it was a first edition paperback. How could I not grab it?
Michael, you just muted yourself by mistake a couple seconds ago.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, great. So he started writing Soul on Ice. He was finished by it in 1965. It was published in 1968. At that point, he was still with the Black Panthers and actually had fled America because he was involved in a shootout with the police shortly after Dr. King's assassination. And he lived in Cuba, he lived in Algeria. And then later in life, he was kind of an interesting character. He became a Mormon. He tried to design pants. He, just had this very weird esoteric life. But getting back to where was Eldridge in 1965, having spent most of his life in prison, he wrote this one passage, which I want to read, which tells us if we don't pay attention to history, we're bound to repeat it. And this is Eldridge in 1965, but I would ask that we all think about what he was writing in the concept of what's going on in America today. And I got to put on my glasses and glance down because I'm going blind, but spare me that. So Eldridge writes in 1965, Americans are becoming increasingly polarized, right and left, with the great body of the people in the middle confused, and sometimes to mask their confusion, feigning indifference. Extremism of the right, extremism of the left. Not since the 1930s and the cringing McCarthy era have these slogans been armed with the power to kill. On the lips of the articulate people today, right and left are verbal razor blades, in a sense unparalleled in American history. California's former governor, Jerry Brown, issued the ominous warning that the stench of fascism is in the air. The last Republican presidential candidate was branded a right-wing extremist. And the FBI's J. Edgar Hoover, America's flattest foot, periodically issues grave reminders that the left-wingers, having mastered deceit, are almost succeeding in subverting this and are busily boring from within to take over that. Both the right and the left claim to love their country. The Ku Klux Klan, the John Birch Society, the American Nazi Party, conservative Republicans, Minutemen, even the Hells Angels all wrap themselves up in the American flag and solemnly call themselves patriots. Their enemies and critics, seeing that the right wing would not disappear when spoofed as kooks, nuts, and little old ladies in tennis shoes, surprised and frightened by their political strength, as indicated in the millions of votes casted for Barry Goldwater, now grant them the de facto political status being applied to them with such sophisticated labels as neo-fascists and right-wingers. As for the left, all red-blooded Americans who love TV and gentle toilet tissue know that the Negro Revolution was conceived in Moscow, scratching Moscow, insert Peking, and launched by left-wing fanatics, and that the growing mass movement in opposition to America's war in Vietnam is communist-inspired and manipulated and controlled. It is not an overstatement to say that the destiny of the entire human race depends on the outcome of what is going on in America today. This is a staggering reality to the rest of the world. They must feel like passengers in a supersonic jetliner who are forced to watch helplessly while a passel of drunks, hypes, freaks, and madmen fight for the controls in the pilot seat. Whether America decisively moves to the right or the left is the fundamental political problem in the world today. And the most serious question now before the American people is, who now, in this post-civil rights era, are the true patriots? The new right or the new left? The new right and the new left in America, each trying to lead the nation down diverging branches of the fork, have between them the fate of the world and the hopes of the tortured, bleeding humanity, forever seeking life and almost receiving betrayal and death from the outstretched hand of the seducer. Eldridge, worth a read.
Lynn, you'll need to unmute your mic as well.
I can't hear you. I
Okay.
can't hear you.
All right, now can you hear me? I'm sorry. I'm new, people. Okay. I mean, I'm not new, but I'm new at this. Okay, so our next reader is going to be Asbury Park Councilperson Yvonne Clayton. Now, I haven't known Yvonne very long, but I know I can always see her smiling and dancing at a concert or helping out at a community event in Springwood Park. Yvonne led the effort to secure the gap funding needed to complete the Springwood Avenue Park. She started the Co-Quality of Life Committee, which conducts citywide cleanups, collects, and distributes clothings. And she is a mentor for the Community Action Network Expunge It program, a free program assisting ex-offenders in clearing their criminal records, and a member of the Asbury Park African American Musical Heritage Project to protect and preserve the rich international musical history that grew on the West Side and Springwood Avenue. And she too was one of my readers at the 2019 American Read-In. She's going to read, sorry, let me get this over here. Oh, there it is. She's going to read 2 poems by Paul Laurence Dunbar, who began writing stories in verse when he was a child. He published his first poems at the age of 16 in a Dayton newspaper and served as president of his high school's literary society. He became one of the first African-American writers to establish an international reputation. In addition to his poems, short stories, and novels, he also wrote the lyrics for the musical comedy in Dahomey, the first all-African musical produced on Broadway in New York. Yvonne?
I'm here.
You ready? Go ahead.
I'm ready. The first poem I'm going to read by Paul Laurence Dunbar is called Sympathy, and you'll recognize some of the words. I know what the cage bird feels, alas, when the sun is bright on the upland slopes And when the wind stirs soft through the springing grass, and the river flows like a stream of glass, when the first bird sings, and the first bud opes, and the faint perfume from its shallot steals, I know what cage bird feels. I know why the cage bird beats his wing till its blood is red on the cruel bars. For he must fly back to his perch and cling when he faint would be on the bough a swing. And a pain still throbs in the old scars, and they pulse again with a keener sting. I know why he beats his wing. I know why the cage bird sings, ah me, when his wing is bruised and his bosom sore, when he beats his bars and he would be free. It is not a carol of joy or glee, but a prayer that he sends from his heart's deep core, but a plea that upward to heaven he flings. I know why the cage bird sings. The second poem is called The Haunted Oak. Pray, why are you so bare, so bare, O bough of the old oak tree? And why, when I go through the shades you throw, runs a shudder over me? My leaves were green as the best I throw, and sap ran free in my veins. But I saw in the moonlight, dim and weird, a guiltless victim's pain. I bent me down to hear his sigh. I shook with his gurgling moan, and I trembled sore when they rode away and left him here alone. They charged him with the old crime and set him fast in jail. And why does the dog howl all night long? And why does the night wind wail? He prayed his prayer and he swore his oath, and he raised his hand to the sky, but the beat of hearts smote on his ear, and the steady tread drew nigh. Who is it rides by night, over the moonlight road? And what is the spur that keeps the pace? What is the galling goad? And now they beat at the prison door. Oh, keeper, do not stay. We are friends of him whom you hold within, and we faint would take him away. From those who ride fast on our heels, with wind to do him wrong, they have no care for his innocence, and the rope they bear is long. They have fooled the jewelers with lying words. They have fooled the man with lies. The bolts unbar, the locks are drawn, and the great door open flies. Now they have taken him from the jail, and hard and fast they ride. And the leader laughs low down in his throat as they halt beside my trunk beside. Oh, the judge, he wore a mask of black, and the doctor one of white. And the minister with his oldest son was curiously bedlight. Oh, foolish man, why weep you now? 'Tis but a little space, and the time will come when these shall dread the memory of your face. I feel the rope against my bark and the weight of him in my grain. I feel in the throe of his final woe the touch of my own last pain. And never shall leaves come forth on the bough that bears the bane. I am burned with dread. I am dried and dead from the curse of a guiltless man. And ever the judge rides by, and goes to hunt the deer. And ever another rides his soul in the guise of a mortal fear. And ever the man he rides me hard, and never a night stays he, for I feel his curse as a haunted bough on the trunk of a haunted tree. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Okay, so now to read is my inspirational friend, Rodney Solomon. I met Rodney back in 2014 at an open mic at Kula Cafe on the corner of Atkins and Springwood Avenue. Now, Kula Cafe is no longer there. It has a new name. I knew it, but I'm sorry, I forgot to look it up. So it was him and his friend Michael decided to create a nonprofit. Oh, wait a minute, back up, sorry. Oh, I messed up here. Okay, never mind. a nonprofit called Conscious Youth Development Services, whose mission is to create and prepare future leaders through holistic interventions. With a focus of healthy diet and nutrition, character development and life skills, mindfulness, yoga, and more, Rodney sets out to awaken the consciousness of our youth by providing them with the tools for self-expansion, helping them become more aware of who they truly are. Rodney will read from The Principles of Ma'at by Moata Ashby, an accomplished lecturer, musician, artist, poet, painter, screenwriter, playwright, and author of over 65 books on yoga philosophy, religious philosophy, and social philosophy based on Asian African principles. Rodney?
How you doing, Lynn?
Hi.
I'll be home in like 10 minutes. I'm still picking up my son from the car. So
Oh, I'm sorry, Rodney.
oh, no apologies. Yeah, I know, but I love the introduction. So thank you for that light and energy. And I'll definitely message you in the chat box as soon as I get home.
Okay,
And
we're gonna go on to the next person then, okay?
I appreciate that. Thank you, Lynn.
No problem. Get that baby, okay? All right. So now Stan Green, who will read about who I really don't know that well, but my research tells me he's a former dean of the McCurry School of Humanities and Social Sciences and professor emeritus of anthropology at Monmouth University. He specializes in baseball, Ireland, and archaeology with a focus on diversity, archaeological methods and theory, and the application of geographic information systems. He's going to read from I Had a Hammer by Hank Aaron, who was a professional baseball right fielder who, oh, there's the Interfaith Neighbors. Oh, that's somebody else. Okay, wait a minute. I'm really messing up here. Sorry. All right, where did my thing go? Okay, something's wrong here. Hank Aaron, there he is. Sorry. There he is. And Aaron is regarded as one of the greatest baseball players of all times.
Thank you, Lynn. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
And can you see me? I don't know. I can't see myself.
Yeah, I can see you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this. I'm really enjoying this reading. I would say one thing not related to my talk, but I did get to meet Eldridge Cleaver because I was a student back when he was doing his touring. He was a wonderful, amazing intellect, and it's not widely known, I think, that he was the author of the quote, "You're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem." His work is very timely. But I'm here to talk about Henry Aaron. I've always found autobiographies to be a great way of understanding history. And Henry Aaron's autobiography, I believe, is the best sports biography, certainly the best I've ever read. As you can see, his life spanned good part of the 20th century and he just died recently. He was a professional baseball player from 1948 until the late 70s and a professional baseball executive after that. And I am going to put my hat on, for those of you who can see me. This is a hat from the New York Black Yankees. It's an homage to the New York Black Yankees, who shared Yankee Stadium, little known to many people, from 1920 on to 1950, when baseball, of course, was segregated. I'm going to read a series of short excerpts from Henry Aaron's autobiography, I Had a Hammer, the Hank Aaron story. And I think it reflects African-American history and in ways that maybe only baseball can. 1952. The day I left Mobile, Alabama to play ball with the Indianapolis Clowns, Mama was so upset she couldn't come to the train station to see me off. She just made me a couple of sandwiches, stuffed $2 in my pocket, and stood in the yard crying as I rode off with my daddy, my older brother and sister, and Ed Scott, a former Negro League player who managed me with the Mobile Black Bears and scouted me for the Clowns. When we got to the station, Mr. Scott handed me an envelope with the name Bunny Downs on it. Downs was the business manager of the Indianapolis Clowns, and when I arrived at their camp, In Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and when I arrived at the camp in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, I was to hand him the envelope unopened. My knees were banging together when I got on that train. I'd never ridden in anything bigger than a bus or faster than my daddy's old pickup truck. As we pulled out of the station and Daddy and Sarah and Herbert Jr. and Mr. Scott kept getting smaller and smaller, I never felt so alone in my life. I just sat there clutching my sandwiches, speaking to nobody, staring out the window of towns I'd never heard of. It was the first time in my life I had ever been around white people. After a while, I got up the courage to walk up and down the aisle a few times. I wanted to see what a dining car looked like, and I needed somebody to tell me where I wasn't allowed to go. Then I sat back down, listened to those wheels carrying me farther down from home, and tried to talk myself out of getting off at the next stop and going back. The day 1948. The day Jackie Robinson came to town in 1948, I skipped shop class to hear him speak in the auditorium on Davis Avenue. That same day, I told my father that I would be in the big leagues before Jackie retired. Jackie had that effect on all of us. He gave us our dreams. He breathed baseball into the Black community, kids and grown-ups alike. Before then, whenever I wanted to be a ball player, I said I wanted to be a ball player, Daddy would set me straight. I remember sitting out on the back porch once when an airplane flew over and I told Daddy I'd like to be a pilot when I grew up. He said, "Ain't no colored pilots." I said, "Okay, then I'll be a ball player." He said, "Ain't no colored ball players." But he never said that anymore after we sat in the colored section of Hartwell Field and watched Jackie Robinson. (1952). We almost never stopped in a restaurant because it was hard to find one that would serve us. We just picked up some groceries when we saw a store and ate on the highway. Sometimes we'd be on the road for a week before we got a chance to wash our clothes. The day after a game in Baltimore, we were rained out of a big Sunday doubleheader at Griffith Stadium in Washington. We had breakfast while we were waiting for the rain to stop, and I can still envision sitting with the clowns in a restaurant behind Griffith Stadium and hearing them break all the plates in the kitchen after we were finished eating. Here we were in the capital of the land of freedom and equality, and they had to destroy the plates that had touched the forks that had been in the mouths of Black men. If dogs had eaten all those plates, they'd have washed them. (1973), the year that Henry Aaron set out to break Babe Ruth's home run record. I went into the season wanting to break the record. I'd never been a one-dimensional hitter, and I didn't want to be one at the moment of history, but the moment of history came knocking. So as far as I was concerned, everything was fine and dandy as long as I stayed healthy and had the ball, the base hits fell in. Not everyone shared that opinion, however. I will premise these next few letters by noting that I'm not going to say the words that were written, but you'll know what I'm talking about. As he received a series of hate mail, thousands and thousands of letters. Dear Black Boy, listen, Black Boy, we don't want no N Babe Ruth. Dear Mr. N, I hope you don't break the Babe's record. How do I tell my kids that an N did it? Dear Hank Aaron, how about some sickle cell anemia, Hank? Dear brother Hank Aaron, I hope you join brother Dr. Martin Luther King in that heaven he spoke of. Dear Hank Aaron, I got orders to do a bad job on you if and when you get 10 home runs from Babe Ruth's record. A guy in Atlanta and a few in Miami, Florida don't seem to care if they don't seem to care if they have to take care of your family too. Dear Hank Aaron, I hope you get it between the eyes. Aaron pursued his professional career through the time of his, pretty close to the time of his death, became an incredibly successful baseball executive. And for those of you who know about baseball, the great success of the recent Atlanta Braves is much the result of Hank Aaron's being the vice president of the team. 1991, when he wrote this book. Someday I might get out of the game, maybe even soon. But I know that even if I do baseball in an official, if I do leave baseball in an official capacity, I'll still be in it up to my neck. I'll still love it as I always have and want to strangle it sometimes. And whatever I'm doing, I'll still be trying to carry on the job that Jackie Robinson started. I once read a quote from Jackie that speaks for me. He said, quote, "Life owes me nothing, baseball owes me nothing, but I cannot as an individual rejoice in the good things I have been permitted to work for and learn while the humblest of my brothers is down in the deep hole hollering for help and not being heard. All I can add is that is amen." Maybe the day will come when I can sit back and be content with the changes that have taken place in America, or at least my part of it, which is baseball. Maybe in the past few years, baseball won't need somebody like me anymore. But until that day comes, I intend to stay in the batter's box. I don't let the big guys push me out of them there anymore and keep hammering away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Okay, so my next reader is Diane Shelton. Now, she's another one I can find often at Springwood Park. Sorry, yeah. She's a community outreach specialist at Interfaith Neighbors, one of the creators of Springwood Rising, created to offer a variety of opportunities for all community members to honor the past, celebrate the present, and prepare for the future. And I did read something about something's happening with on Facebook with Springwood Rising, but unfortunately I didn't put it up in my PowerPoint here. She's going to read from Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, Octavia Butler was one of the first writers in science fiction, traditionally dominated by white male authors. She became in 1995 the first science fiction author to receive a MacArthur Fellowship. And I found out about an event coming up there on Wednesday the 24th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you want to get into that,
Okay.
you can always email me for any of these links and things. Diane?
Lynn, thank you so very much. Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank all the previous readers. I just enjoyed it. I just want to give a little background about Octavia. She grew up in the racially integrated community of Pasadena, which allowed her to experience cultural and ethnic diversity in the midst of racial segregation. She accompanied her mother to her cleaning work, where the two entered white people's houses through back doors as workers. Her mother was treated poorly by her employers. From an early age, an almost paralyzing shyness made it difficult for Butler to socialize with other children. Her awkwardness, paired with a light dyslexia that made her schoolwork a torment, made Butler an easy target for bullies and led her to believe that she was ugly and stupid, clumsy and so socially hopeless. I mean, I just find her so amazing with her background. She has many novels out, and as Lynn said, as far as I know, and I've read several, she's the first author, African-American author of fiction that I have read. I'm from the Octavia E. Butler collection, Parable of the Sower. Be reading a little from chapter 1. excuse me, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Saturday, July 20th, 2024. I had my reoccurring dream last night. I guess I should have expected it. It comes to me when I struggle, when I twist on my own personal hook and try to pretend that nothing unusual is happening. It comes to me when I try to be my father's daughter. Today is our birthday, my 15th and my father's 55th. Tomorrow, I'll try to please him and the community and God. So last night, I dreamed a reminder that it's all a lie. I think I need to write about the dream because this particular lie bothers me so much. I'm learning to fly, levitate myself. No one is teaching me. Oh, sorry. I skipped the page, did I? No, okay. No one is teaching me. Little by little, dream lesson by dream lesson. Not a very subtle image, but a persistent one. I've had many lessons and I'm better at flying than I used to be. I trust my ability more now, but I'll still be afraid. I can't quite control my directions yet. I lean forward toward the doorway. It's a doorway like the one between my room and the hall. It seems to be a long way from me, but I lean toward it. Holding my body stiff and tense, I let go of whatever I'm grasping, whatever has kept me from rising or falling so far. And I lean into the air, straining upward, not moving upward, but not quite falling down either. Then I do begin to move, as though to slide on the air, drifting a few feet above the floor, caught between terror and joy. I drift toward the doorway. Cool, pale light glows from it. Then I slide a little to the right and a little more. I can see that I'm going to miss the door and hit the wall beside it, but I can't stop or turn. I drift away from the door, away from the cool glow into another light. The wall before me is burning. Fire has sprung from nowhere, has eaten in through the wall, has begun to reach for me. The fire spreads. I drift into it. It blazes up around me. I thrash and scramble and try to swim back out of it, grabbing handfuls of air and fire, kicking, burning, darkness. Perhaps I awake a little. I do sometimes when the fire swallows me. That's bad. When I wake up all the way, I can't get back to sleep. I try, but I've never been able to. Do I still have time to finish this?
Sorry, Diane, what?
I can still finish the last part?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This time I don't wake up all the way. I fade into the second part of the dream, the part that's ordinary and real, the part that did happen years ago when I was little, though at the time it didn't seem to matter. Darkness brightening, stars casting their cool, pale, glinting light. We couldn't see so many stars when I was little. My stepmother says to me, she speaks in Spanish, her own first language. She stands still and small, looking up at the broad sweep of the Milky Way. She and I have gone out after dark to take the washing down from the clothesline. The day has not been hot as usual, and we both like the cool darkness of early night. There's no moon, but we can see very well. The sky is full of stars. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Diane, so much. Okay, our next reader is going to be Lisa Carlson. Lisa is an educator working in the K-12 district, residing in Monmouth County. She enjoys spending her time reading, kayaking, and writing, and she is one of the contributors to our happy hours, LGBT Voices from the Gay Bars, a 2017 anthology that came about as a result of the massacre at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Lisa will now read Thank You, Ma'am by Langston Hughes. Langston is a writer whose poems, columns, novels, and plays made him a leading figure in the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s. Langston published his first poem in 1921 and his first book in 1926. He's one of the earliest innovators of the now literary art form called jazz poetry. Lisa?
Okay, thank you. The short story, Thank You, Ma'am, is about a boy who attempts to steal a pocketbook from an older woman. And she decides, instead of calling the police, to take him home and wash him up and feed him. And this is the last scene of that when they are back at her house. The woman was sitting on the daybed. After a while, she said, I were young once, and I wanted things I could not get. There was another long pause. The boy's mouth opened. Then he frowned, but not knowing he frowned. The woman said, You thought I was going to say but, didn't you? You thought I was going to say, but I didn't snatch people's pocketbooks. Well, I wasn't going to say that. Pause, silence. I have done things too, which I could not tell you, son. Neither tell God if he didn't already know. So you sit down while I fix us something to eat. You might run that comb through your hair so you look presentable. In another corner of the room behind a screen was a gas plate and an icebox. Mrs. Jones got up and went behind the screen. The woman did not watch the boy to see if he was going to run now, nor did she watch her purse, which she left behind her on the daybed. But the boy took care to sit on the far side of the room, where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner of her eye if she wanted to. He did not trust the woman not to trust him, and he did not want to mistrust now. Do you need somebody to go to the store? Asked the boy, maybe to get some milk or something. Don't believe I do, said the woman. Unless you just want sweet milk yourself, I was going to make cocoa out of the canned milk I got here. That will be fine, said the boy. She heated some lima beans and ham she had in the icebox, made the cocoa, and set the table. The woman did not ask the boy anything about where he lived, or his folks, or anything else that would embarrass him. Instead, as they ate, she told him about her job in the hotel beauty shop that stayed open late, what the work was like, and how all kinds of women came in and out, blondes, redheads, and the Spanish. Then she cut him a half of her 10-cent cake. Eat some more, son, she said. They were finished eating. She got up and said, now here, take this $10 and buy yourself those blue suede shoes. And next time, do not make the mistake of latching onto my pocketbook, nor anybody else's, because shoes come by devilish like that will burn your feet. I've got to get my rest now, but I wish you would behave yourself, son, from here on in. She led him down the hall to the front door and opened it. Good night, behave yourself, boy, she said, looking out into the street. The boy wanted to say something else other than, thank you, ma'am, to Mrs. Luella Bates, Washington Jones, but he couldn't do so. So he turned at the barren stoop and looked back at the large woman in the door. He barely managed to say thank you before she shut the door and never saw her again.
Thank you, Lisa. And my next reader is supposed to be Ed Johnson. And hi. Stan, did you have a question? Okay, maybe not.
I was just applauding, that's all.
Oh, okay, that's an applaud thing.
That was an
I thought that was
applaud.
I thought that was supposed to be a raised hand, like somebody saying, "Hey, I need help."
No, that was a clap.
Okay. Okay, as I said, my next reader was supposed to be Ed Johnson, And I kind of went through this and I don't see Ed up here. So maybe he had trouble getting in. So I'm going to go on to the next reader, who is Patricia Patton, who is founder of Patricia Patton Consulting. She is a writer and strategic market consultant in the emerging hemp and cannabis space and a board member of the Asbury Book Cooperative. She is a self-described optimist and a busy bee who continues to reinvent herself again and again. So being as I am one busy turtle, I think she and I just might work well together. She's going to read 2 poems from Singing a Tree into Dance by Jackie Shelton Green, currently the state of North Carolina's 9th poet laureate and the first African-American to receive the poet laureate recognition. She was bestowed the North Carolina Award for Literature's Outstanding Performance and Achievement in 2003. In November 2009, she was named the first Piedmont laureate by a collection of Triangle Area Arts Councils and was inducted into the North Carolina Literary Hall of Fame in 2014. And she was named one of the first ever laureate fellows in 2019 by the Academy of African American Poets. Patricia?
Here we go. Yes, my name is Patricia A. Patton, and this is my friend, Jackie Shelton Green. The first poem is I Go into Rooms with Rumi. I wear new faces into rooms I've never gone into before. Faces stitched by hands of grandmothers, whose skin is clay, whose clan is wind, awakening from earth's sleep. I wear new faces into a pitch of circles, a sky of dervishes, a dance of holy. I sit with rivers' tears that have stained the throats of elders, burned the souls of wandering infants, and laced the tea of thirsty virgins. I sit with the wide leaf of palm trees, leaves hurled from the recesses of their color, their markings. I wear new faces into rooms where I've never gone before. I wear new faces crawling into southern veins, screaming veins, flowing into southern creeks alongside rail tracks, choking with wisteria, tracks that refuse to give back Black bones to Black mothers, whose sons' skin is now the fabric of steel. We wash kinky babies in dewdrops, gathered in secret. Muscadine smells send trails of rapture and salvation into woods full of hushed song. Juneteenth hugging and dancing, reclaim bootlegging warriors, reclaim hoochie coochie damsels, straightening their backs while stretching their legs, clad with red fox, primrose pomade, starched mouths, rinsing out red clay stains for a baptism that will not cleanse. Poem 2 is titled, Who Will the Messenger of This Land? Who will be the messenger of this land? Who will be the messenger of this land? Count its veins, speak through the veins, translate the language of water, navigate the heels of lineage. Who will carry this land in parcels, paper, linen, burlap? Who will weep when it bleeds and hardens and forgets to birth itself? Sorry. Who will be the messenger of this land, wrapping its stories carefully in patois of Creole, Irish, Gullah, Twi, Tuscarora, stripping its trees for tea and pleasure? Who will help this land to remember its birthdays, baptisms, weddings, funerals, its rituals, denials, disappointments, and sacrifices? Who will be the messengers of this land, harvesting its truths, bearing unleavened bread, burying mutilated crops beneath its breasts? Who will remember to unbury the unborn seeds that arrived in captivity, shackled, folded, bent, layered in its bowels? We are these messengers with singing hoes and dancing plows, with fingers that snap beans, arms that raise corn, feet that cover the dew falling from okra, beans, and tomatoes. We are these messengers whose ears alone choose which spices, whose eyes alone name basil, nutmeg, fennel, ginger, cardamom, sassafras, whose tongues alone carry hemlock, bloodroot, valerian, St. John's wort, these roots that contain its pleasures, its languages, its secrets. We are the messengers, new messengers arriving as mutations of ourselves. We are these messengers, blue breath, red hands, singing a tree into dance. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. We certainly do appreciate that. And let your friend know that 1953 is a great year because that's the year I was born.
Okay, I'll do that.
So my next reader is going to be Alan Wagman. He's a business trainer at Tommy Hilfiger, an avid book lover of American literature. And he supports independent bookstores whenever he possibly can. He loves music, especially folk, Americana, and jazz. And he's a runner who has completed 9 marathons. Wait a minute, sorry. He will now read From Sula by Toni Morrison. She's a novelist, essayist, book editor, and college professor. Her first novel, The Bluest Eye, was published in 1970, and her critically acclaimed Song of Solomon brought her national attention and won the National Book Critics Circle Award in 1990. In 1988, she won the Pulitzer Prize for Beloved. In 1987, she gained worldwide for Beloved in 1980. She gained worldwide recognition when she was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993. And I have another event, which is coming up on Friday, February 26th to the 28th. It's a tribute to Toni Morrison, which is a Song of Solomon marathon reading. So, Alan?
Sure. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So to get started, a little bit of background on Toni Morrison. Toni was born in Lorain, Ohio. If you don't know, Lorain is a suburb just to the west of Cleveland, very industrial town, especially back when Toni Morrison was born. FYI, yesterday was her birthday. She would have been 90 yesterday if she hadn't passed just about a year and a half ago. And I first read Sula in college about 40 years ago. And I remember my professor saying, as he introduced Sula, the book, that even though Toni Morrison was born in Ohio, she was a Southern writer. And Morrison herself called Ohio neither plantation nor ghetto, but her books have a very definite Southern feel to them. And Sula was her second novel, and she was still trying to find her writing voice. And you feel that in a lot of the passage, in several of the passages that I'm going to read tonight. And what I love about Sula is the language, the imagery, and the overall attempt by Morrison to really kind of dig at finding her voice through her characters. And just yesterday or the day before in the New York Times, as Toni Morrison's birthday came along, they published a list of some of her books that are worth reading. In my mind, they're all worth reading. But in the summary about Sula, they quoted a critic named Hilton Als, who wrote, "Part of the extraordinary power of Sula is that it's a world where men are not the focus. It's the sound of women's voices that takes precedence, makes the story." So with that in mind, Sula is the story of 2 women, Nell Wright and Sula Peace. And they are friends from childhood all the way through their lives. And I want to start with a passage with Nell, who is returning from a trip that she took as a child to visit her mother's mother, her grandmother. So late that night, after the fire was made, the cold supper eaten, the surface dust removed, Nell lay in bed thinking of her trip. She remembered clearly the urine running down and into her stockings until she learned how to squat properly, the disgust on the face of the dead woman and the sound of the funeral drums. It had been an exhilarating trip, but a fearful one. She had been frightened of the soldiers' eyes on the train, the black wreath on the door, the custard pudding she believed lurked under her mother's heavy dress, the feel of unknown streets and unknown people. But she had gone on a real trip, and now she was different. She got out of bed and lit the lamp to look in the mirror. There was her face, plain brown eyes, 3 braids, and the nose her mother hated. She looked for a long time, and suddenly a shiver ran through her. "I'm me," she whispered, "me." Nell didn't know quite what she meant, but on the other hand, she knew exactly what she meant. "I'm me. I'm not their daughter. I'm not Nell. I'm me. Me." Each time she said the word me, there was a gathering in her like power, like joy, like fear. Back in bed with her discovery, she stared out the window at the dark leaves of the horse chestnut. "Me," she murmured, and then sinking deeper into the quilts, I want to be wonderful. Oh, Jesus, make me wonderful." Later on in the story, Nell and Sula have an incident as they are walking home from school, and I'll leave it at that. So when they met, first in those chocolate holes and next through the ropes of the swing, they felt the ease and comfort of old friends, because each had discovered years before that they were neither white nor male, and that all freedom and triumph was forbidden to them. They had set about creating something else to be. Their meeting was fortunate, for it let them use each other to grow on. Daughters of distant mothers and incomprehensible fathers, Sula's because he was dead, Nell's because he wasn't. They found in each other's eyes the intimacy they were looking for. Nell Wright and Sula Peace were both 12 in 1922, wishbone thin and easy-assed. Nell was the color of wet sandpaper, just dark enough to escape the blows of the pitch black true bloods and the contempt of old women who worried about such things as blood mixtures and knew that the origins of a mule and a mulatto were one and the same. Had she been any lighter skinned, she would have needed either her mother's protection on the way to school or a streak of mean to defend herself. Sula was a heavy brown with large, quiet eyes, one of which featured a birthmark that spread from the middle of the lid toward the eyebrow, shaped something like a stemmed rose. It gave her otherwise plain face a broken excitement and blue blade threat like the keloid scar of the razored man who sometimes played checkers with her grandmother. The birthmark was to grow darker as the years passed, but now it was the same shade as her gold-flecked eyes, which to the end were as steady and clean as rain. Their friendship was as intense as it was sudden. They found relief in each other's personality. Although both were unshaped, formless things, Nell seemed stronger and more consistent than Sula, who could hardly be counted on to sustain any emotion for more than 3 minutes. Yet there was one time when that was not true, when she held on to a mood for weeks, but even that was in defense of Nell. 4 white boys in their early teens, sons of some newly arrived Irish people, occasionally entertained themselves in the afternoon by harassing black school children. With shoes that pinched and woolen knickers that made red rings on their calves, they had come to this valley with their parents, believing as they did that it was a promised land, green and shimmering with welcome. What they found was a strange accent, a pervasive fear of their religion and firm resistance to their attempts to find work. With one exception, the older residents of Medallion scorned them. The one exception was the Black community. Although some of the Negroes had been in Medallion before the Civil War, the town didn't even have a name then. If they had any hatred for these newcomers, it didn't matter because it didn't show. As a matter of fact, baiting them was the one activity that the white Protestant residents concurred in. In part, their place in this world was secured only when they echoed the old residents' attitude toward Blacks. These particular boys caught Nell once and pushed her from hand to hand until they grew tired of the frightened, helpless face. Because of that incident, Nell's route home from school became elaborate. She and then Sula managed to duck them for weeks until a chilly day in November when Sula said, "Let's us go on home the shortest way." Nell blinked but acquiesced. They walked up the street until they got to the bend of Carpenter's Road where the boys lounged on a disused well. Spotting their prey, the boys sauntered forward as though there were nothing in the world on their minds but the gray sky. Hardly able to control their grins, they stood like a gate blocking the path. When the girls were 3 feet in front of the boys, Sula reached into her coat pocket and pulled out Eva's paring knife. The boys stopped short, exchanged looks, and dropped all pretense of innocence. This was going to be better than they thought. They were going to try and fight back, and with a knife. Maybe they could get an arm around one of their waists or tear. Sula squatted down in the dirt road and put everything down on the ground. Her lunch pail, her reader, her mittens, her slate. Holding the knife in her right hand, she pulled the slate toward her and pressed her left forefinger down hard on its edge. Her aim was determined but inaccurate. She slashed off only the tip of her finger. The 4 boys stared open-mouthed at the wound and the scrap of flesh like a button mushroom curling in the cherry blood that ran into the corners of the slate. Sula raised her eyes to them. Her voice was quiet. "If I can do that to myself, what you suppose I'll do to you?" Just a couple of short passages to finish up. Again, kind of going to the question of identity in the small town that Nell and Sula lived in. Sula eventually grows up and moves away and spends much of her adult life roaming around. And this little passage comes from when she returns to her mother's home. "How you been doing, Big Mama?" Her mother says, "Getting by, sweet of you to ask. You was quick enough when you wanted something, when you needed a little change, or don't talk to me about how much you gave me, Big Mama, and how much I owe you or none of that." Oh, I ain't supposed to mention it? Okay, mention it." Sula shrugged and turned over on her stomach, her buttocks toward Eva. "You ain't been in this house 10 seconds and already you starting something. Takes 2, Big Mama." "Well, don't let your mouth start nothing that your ass can't stand. When you gonna get married? You need to have some babies. It'll settle you." "I don't want to make somebody else. I want to make myself." And lastly, one more short passage. This is Sula on her deathbed talking with Nell. The backdrop to this is that Sula slept with Nell's husband, who then left Nell. So Nell has gone through adulthood having lost her husband to her best friend. Let's see. "And I really would act like what you call a man. Every man I ever knew left his children. Some were taken. Wrong, Nellie, the word is left. You still going to know everything, ain't you?" "I don't know everything, I just do everything." "Well, you don't do what I do. You think I don't know what your life is like just because I ain't living it? I know what every colored woman in this country is doing." "What's that?" "Dying, just like me. But the difference is they dying like a stump. Me, I'm going down like one of those redwoods. I sure did live in this world." "Really? What have you got to show for it?" "Show to who? Girl, I got my mind and what goes on in it, which is to say, I got me." "Lonely, ain't it?" "Yes, but my lonely is mine. Now your lonely is somebody else's, made by somebody else and handed to you. Ain't that something? A secondhand lonely." And that is Sula. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, so my next reader is going to be Derek Minnow Bloom, who's one of the co-founders of the Racial Justice Project. Derek has worked on food and housing justice issues with low-income people and people experiencing homelessness for the past 10 years. He was also one of the readers of my African American read-ins I held in 2019. He's going to read from The Purpose of Power by Alicia Garza. She's a civil rights activist and writer known for co-founding the International Black Lives Matter movement. She has organized around the issues of health, student services, and rights for domestic workers, ending police brutality, anti-racism, and violence against transgender and gender non-conforming people of color. She currently directs special projects at the National Domestic Workers Alliance and is the principal at the Black Futures Lab. Derek?
Yes.
Yes.
How are you?
There you go.
Well, Lynn, thanks so much for organizing this. Just all this literature is just so powerful. So thankful just to hear this and that we got to live in a time where we get to hear these great works. So thank you. And thanks to the Asbury Book Co-op for hosting this. Alicia Garza, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, I think one thing that's really important to know around George Floyd and the moment in the last year is that it was said that 16 to 25 million people came to protest. So this is, sometimes numbers even higher than the protests during the Vietnam War. So this is really amazing and powerful to think that these 3 Black women, 2 of which are queer, are part of starting one of the largest social movements in US history. And so I'm just going to read from the end of her book. Highly recommend folks to read the whole thing. It's a really beautiful way to how to use radical politics and also reform. She's a special person. So here we go. She says, "We have launched a policy institute focused on building the capacity of Black communities to design, develop, negotiate, win, and implement policies in cities and states. We are building vehicles to impact the outcomes of elections across the nation. We have our eyes set on Hollywood, working to organize influencers and celebrities to use their platforms to call attention to some of the biggest issues impacting Black communities and to get people who follow them to take action on the issues they care about. We've also created political vehicles that contend for power inside the electoral arena. I created the Black to the Future Action Fund and Our Future is Black PAC to invest in Black leaders who have a strong vision for transforming our communities and leaders who are willing to govern with Black communities to address some of the biggest challenges facing our society today. We don't believe in supporting leaders who are Black simply because they are Black. To do so would be supporting the state of politics that we have today. We support Black leaders who have a transformative vision, who believe that politics should be about engaging as many people as possible in the project of governance. Effective and transformational governance in this period requires the participation and engagement of more and more people, as opposed to fewer and fewer. For politics to change, for the conditions in Black communities to change, Black communities must not only be engaged, but must also shape the decisions that impact our lives. We must be involved in our own governance. At the Black Futures Lab, governance is what we are fighting for. We are fighting for the right to make decisions for our own lives and ensure that right for others. Right now, our communities are governed by corporations and financial capital. Our leaders know that they have to address the needs and concerns of these influences if they want to keep their jobs. Today, elected officials are careful not to disappoint these forces, knowing that to do so would mean that they would reap intolerable consequences. But what if our leaders knew that to leave Black communities behind would reap intolerable consequences? What if our leaders were as afraid to disappoint Black people as they were afraid to disappoint lobbyists, banks, and other corporate actors? Governance is power. It is the place where we get to decide who makes what decisions. It is the place where we get to decide the values upon which we make decisions. And it is the place where we get to choose if it is to be governance by the many or governance by the few. We do this work in service of building a movement that is bigger than hashtags, bigger than social media followings. We do this work because we believe that Black communities deserve to be powerful in every aspect of our lives, and politics should be no exception. When we declare that our future is Black, what we mean is that addressing the needs, concerns, hopes, and aspirations of Black people will bring about a better future for all of us. Addressing the needs, concerns, hopes, and aspirations of Black people will change how and who can access healthcare, education, jobs, and housing. Paying attention to what Black people need will keep people out of prisons and jails and will require investments in supporting people to put their lives back together, assessing mental and emotional health services, finding new solutions to address what happens when human beings harm one another, and addressing racist sentencing practices that criminalize Black life. Actualizing the dreams of Black communities means addressing inequalities in immigration laws, expanding the opportunities for Black families of all kinds to be assured that their children can grow up to be adults, and allowing America to be reconstructed to get closer to what it promises: freedom, justice, and liberty for all. We are but a small part of the infrastructure that must be built in America to change the conditions that Black communities experience. In our freedom dreams, there is a whole web of institutions that work to change the story of what Black communities are, design policies to protect Black families from being preyed upon, and support Black communities to thrive. There are institutions that work to make Black communities whole again, and they are nurtured as much as the humanly possible by the full engagement and participation of Black communities. In our freedom dreams, Black communities are powered beyond measure, and we are free to exercise that power in service of our goals, in service of the meeting our needs, and in the collaboration with other communities that, like us, are working to heal from the harm that the American project has inflicted upon generations. It will not be easy, and it will encounter resistance. To get even close, we have a much bigger project on our hands, which is protecting the country from sliding backwards into the dark ages. The rise of fascist politics in America is dangerous and will have impacts far into the next decade, and more is at stake now than ever before. But now is not the time to be cynical. Now is the time to reimagine what else can connect us beyond fear, violence, and poverty, and environmental degradation. It is always easiest to point out what is wrong. Where we fall short is always accessible. If today's hashtag is Make America Great Again, then the movement we need to build is one that will force America to be great for the first time. A movement where we recognize that we need one another to survive and that our survival can be interdependent rather than parasitic. A movement where we remind ourselves of what really connects all of us, a desire to be seen and valued, to make each day count, to be loved and to love in return. A movement where we resist replicating the same dynamics that we fight against. I don't believe in utopia. There's no scenario where suddenly everyone gets it and starts organizing with intersectional lenses, politics sheds its corporations, and corporations reverse their death grip on the economy and civil society. What is more likely is that there will be one step forward and a few more steps back. And like an onion, each layer will peel back, expose more questions, more contradictions, more challenges that we did not anticipate. That is the hard and beautiful work of movement building, figuring out how to solve the problem of how to be who we need to be in this moment so that we can be powerful together. It's figuring out who the we must be for us to unlock the next level. And in a nation that is built from colonialism, genocide, enslavement, and theft, it will be easier for us to pick one another apart than it will be to roll up our sleeves and look honestly at the task in front of us. Every morning when I wake up, I pray. I place my head against the floor and I thank my God for allowing me to see another day. I give thanks for the blessings that I have received in life. I ask for forgiveness for all of the ways in which I am not yet the person I want to be. And I ask for the continued blessing of life so that I can work to get closer to where I want to be. And in my prayers, I ask my God to remind me that the goal is not to get ahead of everyone else, but instead to live my life in such a way that I remember we must make it to the other side together. Not everyone will make it. Not everyone will want to, but for those of us who do want to make it to the other side together, we will have to remember that we are in it for the long haul, that we need one another, that we can be more than the worst thing we've ever done. We can be better than the worst we've ever been. I pray that I remember to believe in myself, to believe in us, and the future is not only Black, it is ours to shape. When you finish this book, if you've made it this far, I hope that you too will summon your faith to build an America like we've never seen before. Making America great again is forcing America to live up to its promises for the first time. Making America great is ensuring that America remembers that each of us is but a tiny speck on this planet who must learn how to coexist in ways that allows others to live well too. Making America great is making right all that has been done wrong in the name of progress and profit. And at its core, making America great is a commitment to ensuring that everyone can have a good life. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Okay, I think I see Rodney here. Yeah, there he is. Okay, let me find my notes. So you already heard and everything. I already talked about Rodney and everything. So Rodney's going to be reading from, let me go back here. About, okay.
Philosophy of Ma'at.
Let's see. Yeah,
Ma'at.
There he is.
Oh, yes. Here
Yeah,
we
you
go.
know what, Rodney? I don't know where it is, but I have.
Oh, you just passed it, but it's okay. I
No,
think
I
the
have
essence.
him. I have him, Rodney, but I actually had.
Oh, there we go, right there.
Yeah, I
Walter
know I
Asbury.
have him. I have him, dear, but I also had your logo from Kids.
Ah,
Yeah,
that's
I had
okay.
your logo up here, and I don't know what happened to it. Maybe I deleted it by mistake or something.
Hey, I guess it's not meant to be right now, but I'll be okay.
Okay, so go ahead, Rodney.
Oh yeah, man. First and foremost, man, hold us in love, everybody, and definitely want to give my gratitude and appreciation to everyone that has shared, but also to Lynn for putting this together. Lynn has been an OG, a veteran at our open mic nights since we first started, with having a few folks into the room, and has really been a part. And it's beautiful to be a part of her energy as she creates this space. And just want to make the attention. The book that I'm sharing from is called The Philosophy of Ma'at by Walter Asbury, but it really was a form of knowledge that helped form the foundation of who I have become as a being on this earth. And also wanted to raise the awareness of the Kemetic philosophy of yoga, because a lot of folks, when you think about yoga in the West, you automatically think India, you automatically think about those areas, but a lot of us don't recognize that the roots of India actually of yoga stem in ancient Kush in Ethiopia. And a lot of the Greek philosophers would write about their passages and their journeys through the Middle East. And they noticed that the people that they saw in Kemet were actually the same exact people that they saw in India in the earlier days. And they actually stemmed from Ethiopia and Kush, where it was the same knowledge that just first got to Africa and then later on passed down to the Huns in India. And it's seeing how they're actually connected, they're siblings, they're brothers and sisters. And a lot of people acknowledge the knowledge from India, but most folks aren't aware of the depth of knowledge that predates it in ancient Kemet. So, and also, man, hopefully waking something within you, breaking down the philosophy of yoga. So breaking down the system. And I'm gonna just talk about what yoga is from the Afrocentric perspective, the Kemetic philosophy, and then read something about the laws of Ma'at, which I think is very important, especially in this day, to bring more balance, more order, more harmony within our collective society. So without further ado, more than just listening to the words that I read, try to feel the energy that awakens within your heart and inside your mind. So what is yoga and how does Ma'at philosophy relate to yoga? Ma'at philosophy is an aspect of a yogic teaching. Therefore, it is important to understand Ma'at yoga in the context of all Egyptian yoga traditions. Therefore, it is appropriate here to present a brief introduction to the concepts of yoga and the specific yogic teachings that developed in ancient Africa and later in India. Most students of yoga are familiar with the yoga traditions of India. Consider that the Indian texts such as the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are the primary and original source of yogic philosophy and teaching. However, upon examination, the teachings currently exposed in all of the major forms of Indian yoga can be found in ancient Egyptian scriptures, inscribed in papyrus, and on temple walls, as well as steles and statues, obelisks, and other sources. Yoga is the practice of mental, physical, and spiritual disciplines, which lead to self-control and self-discovery through the purification of the mind, body, and spirit, so as to discover the deeper spiritual essence which lies within each and every human being and object in the universe. In essence, the goal of yoga practice is to unite or yoke one's individual consciousness with universal or cosmic consciousness. Therefore, ancient Egyptian religious practice, especially in the terms of the rituals and other practices in ancient Egyptian temple systems, known as Shata Neter, the way of the hidden supreme being, or spiritual disciplines were known in ancient times as Samai Tawi, which means Egyptian yoga. should as well be considered as universal streams of self-knowledge philosophy, which influenced and inspired the great religions and philosophers of to this day. Many people aren't aware that the system of Kemetic yoga later transformed into Gnosticism, which has its roots and branches that stem into Christianity. In this sense, religion in its purest form is also a yoga system, as it seeks to reunite the soul with its true original source, God. In broad terms, any spiritual movement or discipline that brings one closer to self-knowledge is a yogic movement. The main recognized forms of the yoga disciplines are the yoga of wisdom, devotional love, meditation, selfless action, and serpent power. You know, and what's beautiful to see here is they really acknowledge the beauty and essence of all the religious systems and how they are all formations of connecting to God. And the more you do research, you begin to realize that there's more connection than separation. Now, to conclude, I just want to break down and understand the idea of ma'at. You know, it's more so like an image or a form of consciousness to remind you of how to sustain balance and harmony, but it also has great connections to principles that relate to the study of the universe and the Big Bang Theory. And when you begin to layer the metaphor and the mythology, you begin to recognize that these are just stories that they told to their children and to their students. And when they begin to conceptualize at a deeper level, they can really begin to show that these stories are not just myth, but they have a connection to how creation forms. So who is Ma'at? When Ra emerged in his bark for the first time and creation came into being, he was standing on the pedestal of Ma'at. Thus the creator Ra lives by Ma'at and has established creation on Ma'at. So you're asking, who is Ma'at? Ma'at represents the very order which constitutes creation. Therefore, it is said that Ra created the universe by putting Ma'at in the place of chaos. See, Ra is this pure energy, pure potential, and it can't create anything until it has that balance, order, and structure of what Ma'at is. This is more just symbolism. So creation itself is Ma'at. Creation without order is chaos. Ma'at is a profound teaching in reference to the nature of creation and the manner in which human conduct should be cultivated. It refers to a deep understanding of divinity and the manner in which virtuous qualities can be developed in the human heart so as to come closer to the divine. Ma'at is a philosophy, a spiritual symbol, as well as a cosmic energy or force which pervades the entire universe. Now, if you relate this to quantum physics and learning about like even Einstein's theory of relativity, they have discovered that dark matter exists in all the empty space around us. There is no space between us. It's an energy that they're still learning to understand, but you learn these ancient cultures were talking about these sciences before we have discovered them in our modern time. She is a symbolic embodiment of world order, justice, righteousness, correctness, harmony, and peace. She is also known as her headdress composed of a feather of truth. She is a form of the goddess Aset, who represents wisdom and spiritual awakening through balance and equanimity. In ancient Egypt, the judges and all those connected with the judicial system were initiated into the teachings of Ma'at. Thus, those who would discharge the laws and regulations of society were well trained in the ethical and spiritual mystical values of life presented in this volume, which are fairness, justice, and the responsibility to serve society in order to promote harmony in the world and the possibility for spiritual development in an atmosphere of freedom and peace. And when I read that line, it really makes me think about what would our society look like, right? If every position that hold high ranking in order, from our judicial system to those who have policy control, really at the deepest level within their heart, enacted this level of philosophy to lead and guide a society. What would that world look like? Now, last two paragraphs. For only when there is justice and fairness in society can there be an abiding harmony and peace. And they made it very clear, if you don't see harmony and peace within the society that you live in, it's because the systems that are in order are not acting from a space of Ma'at. What's above is going to trickle down within to the systems below it, and that begins by the foundation of who's guiding it. Harmony, peace are necessary for the pursuit of true happiness and inner fulfillment in life. And that goes from a macro level to a micro level. If you don't have harmony and peace because of the situation that you may be in or the difficulty to manage challenges, it's going to be difficult to really live life geared towards your purpose. Along with her associates, you know, Ma'at encompasses the teachings of karma, reincarnation, or the destiny of every individual based on past actions, thoughts, and feelings, meaning that every action that you do has an outcome, you know, and the more you become conscious, the more you become aware, and the more you have principles to guide you, you can make choices in the present moment that will produce a more harmonious future. Thus, they have an important role to play in the judgment scene in the book of Coming Forth by Day. Understanding their principle leads the aspirant to become free of the cycle of suffering and to discover the supreme bliss and divine state that exists in them. You know, and I chose to share this because at a surface level, it doesn't have to be taken from a spiritual perspective, but it's just learning to develop a principle and a foundation of philosophy that shows how to shape character and the morals within the human beings, more particularly in the youth that we are serving. Because when adults don't represent Ma'at or we don't have that grounding, we're passing that energy on to our students. And the last thing I want to mention about the idea or the study of Ma'at is they believe that on your death, they would weigh your heart on the scales of Ma'at, and they would weigh it against an ostrich feather. And it was a metaphor that if your heart was heavier than an ostrich feather, that you would have to go through this cycle of birth and death continuously until you learn the lessons to live a harmonious life. And if your heart was as light as a feather, they believe that you would begin to move on to the next stage of whatever the culture Kemet's believed as the existence, which is beyond our physical limitations. Now, physically, your heart will always become heavier than a feather. But when you think back at an emotional level, when I go to bed at night, you should always weigh your heart on the scales of Ma'at. Am I going to sleep with my heart heavy, or am I going to sleep with my heart light? You know, and do I have tools? Do I have support? Do I have systems in place that allow me to live my life where I can bring my heart back into that lightness? Because we all know when we have that heaviness, that stress and anxiety, and it ruminates, it makes it very difficult for us to function. We become more reactive. We don't make the best decisions, and whatever we're connected to begins to get infused by the energy that sometimes we're not consciously aware of that we're spreading around us. So when we take the time to look back within us and use these examples as metaphors and tools to support your growth and transformation, and if you choose to go beyond just a simple knowledge and intellectual aspect, it begins to produce a level of balance and harmony. And that's what I wanted to share with you all today. So thank you, Lynn, for your energy. Thank you all for your ears. And I hope there was something that could have resonated with you, whatever aligns with your own personal journey and your understanding on the path we're on. So thank you all.
Thank you, Rodney. Thank you so much. Okay, and our next reader is going to be my friend and neighbor of many years, Lorraine Stone. Let's see, now I got to go down here. Who is the, oh, there she is. She is a performance artist and actress of many talents under her performance company, The Wisdom Keeper. When she has a website, which I keep up for her. She is also one of my readers from the 2019 African American read-ins. And believe me, when if I do one again next year, I'm going to mention, if anybody here, I'm going to mention you all. So anyway, Lorraine is going to read, and I'm going to get up and let her be here in my seat because she's right here next to me. She's at my house. She's going to read The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. Amanda is the youngest inaugural poet in the U.S. history, as well as an award-winning writer. And she was the first poet to speak at the Super Bowl. Sit here.
Greetings, greetings. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this marvelous young woman and this marvelous piece of writing. And all I want to tell you is I am not she. I am not 20, whatever that is. And I am a poet and an artist in my own right. But the words are so important, so powerful. Just take them in. The hill we climb. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours. Before we knew it, somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country at a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother, can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reading for one. And yet, we are far more polished, far from pristine. But that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes, not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to seek another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tried, we tired. That we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we are to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promise to glade, the hill we climb. If only we dare, it's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into it and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith, we trust. For while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption we feared at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour. But within it, we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what will be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their borders. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left with. Every breath from my bronze pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will raise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the windswept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake rim cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, recover, and every known nook of our nation and every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge, battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light. If only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you, Amanda. You're welcome.
Wait a minute. Okay. All right, everyone. Hold on a minute. Let me get over here. So this is brought to you by my busy turtle. If anybody doesn't know, it's a website I've been running for about 2007. I let people know about events happening in Monmouth County. And I often share a lot of stuff on Facebook. And now that we're going into virtual, also been sharing a lot of other different information that's not pertaining just to Monmouth County. So I hope you enjoyed the evening here. And I see you clapping there. And I hope so. I hope to do this next year in February and everything. So if nobody doesn't know, I think I sent enough emails out that on the 25th, I'm going to be doing another sort of read-in, but it's not a read-in. I'm going to be talking about the African American read-in, about how it all began and everything 31 years ago. And the surprising thing is that a lot of people do not know about this event. And everything. So like I said, I'm going to have it on the 25th, right? Yeah, Thursday the 25th at 11 a.m. and it's being hosted by the Long Branch Library. And I see there's Liza.
Thank you so much, Lynn. This was fantastic. Thanks for organizing, and thanks to all the readers. Those were so powerful. So thanks again for including ABC in this, and yeah, for all your work getting this together.
All right. So thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Hope to see you soon. Be well.
Good night.
Good night.
Bonnie, thank you.